Chapter 22 Romance Dinner. Before Chinue started the car, he raised his hand and gently stroked the corner of his lips. There was a faint smile in his cold eyes. Jianran finally looked like she was 3 years ago. The car slowly drove out of the parking lot and quickly blended into the noisy traffic in the city. However, the inside of the car was so quiet that even the breathing of 2 people was very obvious. Jianran sat up straight and looked out of the car window. She did not dare to look directly at Chinue, but she could not help but secretly look at him. He was very serious when he drove. He looked straight, as if nothing had happened just now. Jianran curled her lips and snorted in her heart. A cold man! Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of a place called Skyscraper. Chinue threw the car keys to the staff and walked into the hall with Jianran. Skyscraper was 69th floor high, and it was the tallest building in Asia when it was built. It was also a landmark building in Jiangbei City for many years. Skyscraper was located in the most prosperous commercial center of Jiangbei City. There were many cars and many buildings in this area. Especially the rotating restaurant on the top floor of Skyscraper, it was even more famous. Many tourists from other places would buy tickets and come in to have a seat. They would order a cup of coffee and sit quietly enjoying the beautiful scenery of the fragrant river city next to the Jiangbei. When Jianran first came to the Jiangbei, she and Ling Feiyu had come here before. Just the tickets to this building cost $80. The price of the dishes in the tourist area was needless to say. However, even though it was expensive, there was still an endless stream of customers coming and going every day. Today made Jianran feel strange. It was not even 8 o'clock in the evening, but she did not see anyone else by the time the elevator arrived. As Jianran was thinking, her hand was held by the warmth again. Chinue held her hand and walked into the VIP staircase, heading straight to the 69th floor. His hand was really warm, or perhaps Jianran's hand was really cold. When he held it like this, Jianran was very greedy for the warmth he gave her. She looked up at him and smiled. Chinue, you invited me here to eat? He faced the elevator door and stood straight. Just when Jianran thought he would not answer, she heard him say, yes. It was just a simple word of yes, but Jianran felt that it was enough. He spoke very little, and she did not only know today. Not long after, the elevator reached the 69th floor. The usual crowded place was very quiet today. Except for the staff, she didn't see anyone else. The Love restaurant was surrounded by roses of various colors. In the middle of the table was a table. The roses on the table were arranged in the shape of a heart. The orange lights added a dreamy color to the table. Mr. Chin, Mrs. Chin, this way please. A beautiful waitress welcomed them and said polite words, but she did not even look at Jianran. The waitress's eyes were almost glued to Chinue, as if she did not care about Jianran beside Chinue at all. Jianran was a little depressed. It was a bad thing for a woman to be good-looking. A man who was good-looking was a monster. The way this woman looked at a handsome man was even simpler and cruder than when a man looked at a beauty. Chinue suddenly stopped and looked coldly at the waitress. Ask your person in charge to come here. The waitress smiled. Mr. Chin, I am the manager of this restaurant. Chinue raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, it is time to change the person in charge of this restaurant. The female service staff's smile instantly became not knowing whether to laugh or cry, but her professionalism still forced her to smile and say, Mr. Chin, Mrs. Chin, this way please. I will ask the other staff to come over. After sitting down, Jianran could not hold back her laughter. Chinue looked at her strangely. What makes you think it is so funny? Jianran forced herself to hold back her laughter and looked up at him. Do you like your women like this? She likes me? Chinue raised his eyebrows and said very straightforwardly, I don't like her. The waitress just now looked really good, and her figure was also very good. Ordinary men would not reject her so directly. Perhaps it was also the first time that the woman had been so obviously rejected. That was why her expression was so ugly in that instant. Jianran suddenly remembered Ling Feiyu's words and could not help but look at Chinue. Ordinary men would not be able to bear to reject a beauty. Could it be that Chinue really did not like women? Thinking of this, Jianran looked at Chinue with some probing eyes. If he really did not like women, would it be good or bad for her? A melodious music played. It was a song Jianran was very familiar with and very fond of. As she listened, Jianran could not help but snort. Her eyebrows flew up and her eyes were crystal clear. She looked like an elf. As she hummed, Jianran felt an unusually gentle gaze. She looked up and saw Chinue quietly looking at her. She smiled at him. This is a song that I really like. Chinue gestured for the waiter to pour the red wine for them and raised his glass. Do you want to drink some wine? Jianran glanced at him. This kind of wine was very expensive for a working class like her. She usually did not have the chance to drink it. Now that there was a rich boss treating her, of course she would not be polite. She raised her glass and clinked it with Chinue. Charles! Chinue raised his eyebrows slightly. Tries. Jianran raised her glass and drank the wine in it in one gulp. She had a heroic feeling. Chinue shook his head helplessly. The wine should not be drunk like this. It was not that he felt sorry for the wine, but Jianran's way of drinking was easy to get drunk, and she did not look like a woman. She looked sharp and wild. 3 years ago, Jianran had a kind of vitality that made people yearn for. She was brimming with youth. The current Jianran hid all of her sharpness and had an extra peace and quiet on her body. No matter if it was 3 years ago or 3 years later, the only thing that Jianran did not change was her optimistic attitude towards life and her passion for work. Jianran was not satisfied. She instinctively licked her watery cherry lips. It was an unintentional movement, but in Qinyue's eyes, her movement was extremely charming. A different light slowly rose in his eyes. Jianran, however, did not know at all. She said in a hurry, "This wine tastes good. Let me have another cup." Qinyue stopped the waiter this time. He personally poured a cup for Jianran and said, "Drink slowly." "Okay," Jianran replied, but her body did not listen. She drank the wine in the cup in one gulp again. When you are hungry, drinking is easy to get drunk. Qinyue waved to the waiter to serve the dishes. He asked the waiter to prepare 2 servings of fruit salad and steak. It was almost 9 o'clock in the evening, and Jianran did not have lunch at noon. Once the steak was served, she could not wait to take action. However, when her knife and fork made a sound, Qinyue was so quiet that he did not move at all. Chapter 23. This is a real kiss. Jianran looked up. She saw Qinyue cutting the steak elegantly without making a sound. This was a perfect and eye-opening scene. She looked at herself again. Usually she did not feel that there was a problem with her eating Western food. Compared to Qinyue, she knew who was better and who was worse. Qinyue cut the steak and pushed his share to her. "You eat first." Jianran smiled. "Thank you." She ate the steak that Qinyue personally cut. Jianran's heart was sweet. It had been a long time since she felt this way. After the meal, Jianran was full. The bottle of wine was almost finished by her. She felt dizzy. Her usual alcohol tolerance was not bad. Today, she and Qinyue only drank 1 bottle of wine, but she felt drunk. Jianran thought, maybe she was drunk. In the restaurant that could see the night view of Zhengbei, she listened to beautiful music. She and Qinyue, such a good-looking man, this man was also her husband, ate together. She didn't need to drink at all. This atmosphere alone was enough to make her drunk. She smiled and said, "Qinyue, thank you for giving me such a romantic dinner." Qinyue smiled meaningfully. He used his low and sexy voice to calmly say, "Go and thank Special Assistant Shu. Everything tonight was arranged by her." Jianran's heart was in a mess. She really wanted to stomp Qinyue under her feet and ask, "Does your mother know that you speak like this? Do you still want to live a good life?" Of course, Jianran could only think about it. She really did not have the courage to stomp this aloof CEO under her feet. However, Jianran also understood that even if it was arranged by Special Assistant Shu, if not for CEO's approval, this matter would not have happened. After she thought this way, Jianran felt much better. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, which made her less reserved in front of Qinyue. She playfully pouted at Qinyue. "You are a man who lies." Her pouting action made her lips that were dyed red like red cherries, making people salivate. Qinyue's eyes darkened. "Sit over here a little." His voice was sexy and deep, and his tone was overbearing. Jianran was resisting in her heart, but her body was very honest as she sat over to him. "Jianran." He called her name in a deep voice, as intoxicating as the red wine he drank tonight. Jianran blinked her beautiful big eyes and looked at him in confusion. "What?" The next moment, Qinyue wrapped his arms around her waist. He buried his head and kissed her hard. At first, it was just 4 overlapping lips, but Qinyue gradually became dishonest. Jianran was shocked and embarrassed, and she could not help but snort. Qinyue took the opportunity to pry open her neat teeth and wrapped it around the tip of her tongue. He used his actions to tell her what a real verbal battle was. He kissed for a long time before it ended. He kissed so hard that Jianran's body went soft. Her 2 hands subconsciously grabbed his clothes tightly. Before she could recover her senses, she saw Qinyue's fingers gently caressing her lips. He used his languid voice that was even more intoxicating than red wine to say, "This is what a real kiss is." Jianran's heart was in a mess again. It turned out that this man had always remembered what happened in the car. He was really a petty man. She gritted her teeth and really wanted to pounce over and kiss him fiercely, like how he kissed her. No matter how proud she was, she loudly told him, "Don't think that only you know how to do it. I also know how to do it." However, her imagination was very rich, and reality was very bone-chilling. Jianran was already so embarrassed that she could not raise her head when she thought of this. She did not even have the courage to secretly look at Qinyue. On the way home, Jianran kept looking out of the car window. She thought of many things. Qinyue had prepared such a romantic dinner for her. He had just kissed her, and they would sleep on the same bed at night. Something might happen. She could think of it with her toes. She and Qinyue were husband and wife, so it was natural that something like that would happen. But Jianran felt that she was not fully prepared, so she felt a little weak in her heart. When the driver drove past the redwoods not far from their residential area, she suddenly shouted, "Stop the car." The driver looked at Qinyue through the rearview mirror. He only slowed down when he saw Qinyue nod. He found a place to stop the car. Jianran quickly opened the door and got out of the car. She stood outside the door and said to Qinyue, "I want to go down for a while. You can go back first." She thought in her heart, wait for Qinyue to go back and sleep first. She waited until he fell asleep before going back. Then she wouldn't have to face such an embarrassing thing as lying on the bed and covering herself with a blanket to chat. She did not know that Chinue also got out of the car. He handed a thick glove to her. Put it on. I'll walk with you for a while. I don't need you to accompany me. Her goal was to leave him. If he followed her, it would seem that she wanted to take a walk with him. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her, saying in a deep voice, "Let's go back together now, or walk together. It's up to you to choose." Jianran thought to herself that this man had switched to overbearing mode again. These two choices were not what she wanted, but to walk together was better than going home and lie down together. It was better to be in bed, so Jianran chose to take a walk together. She put on the gloves that he gave her, and Jianran smiled. "Thank you." Qingyu did not say anything. He held her hand and slowly walked along the beach park. It was not early anymore. However, there were quite a lot of people walking around the beach park. Occasionally, a couple would walk by them. Some were holding hands, some were boys carrying girlfriends, and some were hugging and kissing people who didn't care about passing by. Jianran looked at others kissing and remembered what Qingyu had done to her just now. When he kissed her, she was indeed frightened. She did not even properly enjoy the first time he kissed her. At this time, she slowly recalled. She only had one feeling, and that was that she didn't hate Qingyu kissing her. When she thought of this, Jianran quietly raised her head to look at Qingyu. She met his gentle gaze again, making her involuntarily lean towards his embrace. The sea breeze at night was very cold, but Jianran, who was always afraid of the cold, did not feel cold this time. Perhaps it was because there was someone by her side who could block the wind for her. After they walked for a while, Jianran stopped and said in a hurry, "Qingyu, do you know what I thought the first time I came here?" Qingyu did not say anything, but his eyes told her to continue. Jianran pointed at the shallow sea area and said with joy, "At that time, I thought, if I had enough money, I would dig deeper into the shallow sea. Then I would build a paradise on the sea in the middle of this area. It will not be open to the public and will only be open to oneself. I'm tired. When I'm in a bad mood, I'll come up and take a walk by myself. The sea breeze, the sound of the waves, look at the freely flying seabirds. It's so beautiful, just thinking about it." Jianran said a lot in one breath, as if there was a paradise of the sea in front of her, and she was enjoying all the beauty in her heart. Qingyu listened carefully and did not interrupt her. Instead, he reached out and held her hand. Jianran smiled again. "Of course, this is just a random thought." Chapter 24. It was like a dream. Qingyu reached out and gently rubbed Jianran's head. "No matter what you do, you must have an idea first. If you don't have an idea, how can you do it? When the company is hiring employees, I pay attention to their imagination." When he said this, his tone was mixed with the tone of a leader. It made Jianran really feel that she was taking a walk with CEO in the company, not with her husband. However, Jianran did not mind what kind of identity Qingyu used to accompany her. If there was someone who was willing to listen to her unrealistic thoughts, it would be a very happy thing for her. She continued, "I won't be able to earn that much money in my life. Even if I get lucky one day and win the lottery, then I won't be able to get the government's approval." Jianran knew that this was destined to be just one of her thoughts. It was a beautiful dream that she had woven for herself. It was not only a dream that could not be realized in this lifetime, but also in the next lifetime. Hearing her disappointed tone, Qingyu did not say anything to comfort her. He only tightened his grip on her hand a little. At the same time, Qingyu also noticed that when Jianran was talking about all this, in her plan, she had always been the only person in her dreams. She had never planned for her husband. In the end, Jianran could not resist the sleepiness brought by alcohol. She did not walk for long before yawning again and again. She tried her best to open her eyes, but could not open them. In her daze, she vaguely felt that Qingyu took off his coat and covered her with it. He even hugged her in his arms. His thick and solid palm gently patted her back. Perhaps this was just an illusion caused by alcohol, but Jianran was very optimistic and was willing to believe that this moment of beauty was real. She believed that after being abandoned by so many people in front of her, she could still have happiness. She worked so hard to live and work so hard. Didn't she just want to live a happier life? Right now, happiness was waving at her. She seemed to be getting closer and closer to happiness. Just thinking about it made her want to have a beautiful dream. Jianran did not know what happened after that. She also did not know how she got home and how she slept on the bed. Anyway, when she woke up, she was the same as the last time she was in Bahai Manor. She only wore a nightgown. This time, she wasn't as shocked as the last time. She seemed to know that even if she didn't know anything, Qingyu wouldn't touch her. She raised her head slightly and saw a man in a silver-gray suit sitting on the sofa by the window, reading newspapers. In just a short month, every day when she opened her eyes, she would look at the figure sitting by the window. This matter seemed to have become a habit of Jianran. "You are awake." Hearing her voice, Qingyu looked up. His eyes were clear and cold. It was as if he did not kiss her hard or accompany her for a walk last night. But compared to Qin Yue's cold and calm reaction, what shocked Jianran more was the Mianmian that obediently squatted beside Qin Yue's feet. Yesterday, the Mianmian wanted to chase him away, but today, she was obediently squatting beside Qin Yue's feet. From time to time, she would even use her little head to rub against Qin Yue's feet. That manner was so obedient that it could not be said how obedient she was. One night could change the hostile relationship between a man and a dog. What exactly happened between them that she did not know? Morning. Seeing that Qin Yue and the Mianmian had a better relationship, Jianran's voice sounded a little lighter. Hearing her voice, the Mianmian immediately ran over while wagging its tail. She jumped onto the bed and threw herself into Jianran's arms. She cried out a few times with a coquettish tone. Jianran touched its head. I am very glad to see that you and Uncle Qin can get along well. Qin Yue put down the newspaper in his hand and strode over. He picked up the Mianmian and said, Let's go out first. I'll wait for you to eat breakfast. Jianran was speechless. Why did she feel that these two people? She felt that the relationship between Qin Yue and Mianmian seemed very harmonious on the surface, but in fact, they were secretly competing with each other. Jianran changed into her work clothes and came out to wash up. She saw that breakfast had changed into a different style, and it was still a variety of exquisite desserts. Jianran had to praise the auntie who helped Qin Yue cook. She really put in a lot of effort. Every day, she would change into different styles for breakfast. She never repeated them. At the dining table, the Mianmian was already enjoying its breakfast, but Qin Yue was waiting for her at the dining table. His gaze fell on her, as if he was very satisfied with her new uniform. The company had changed all the female employees' work clothes yesterday, and the standard suit shirt and short skirt had been changed into a set. Lin Mei and the others also said that Boss Qin was very considerate. They no longer needed to wear short skirts in the cold winter, because although the skirt looked very beautiful, it would make them feel cold. Of course, other than Special Assistant Shu, no one else knew that the considerate Boss Qin only did not want his wife to wear a short skirt for others to see. Qin Yue served the porridge to Jianran and said, Today, I am going to another city to discuss a project. I will not be back until tomorrow. Jianran drank a mouthful of sweet potato porridge with moderate temperature and nodded. Go and do your work. Don't worry about me. I have the Mianmian with me. The Mianmian barked twice, indicating that it did not matter if Qin Yue was not around. It could stay at home with its mother. Jianran reached out and touched the Mianmian's head. Mianmian, you have to be obedient at home today. I will bring you delicious food tonight. The Mianmian rubbed its little head against Jianran's hand, as if to show that it had always been obedient. Jianran and the Mianmian interacted very happily, completely ignoring the fact that there was still a Qin Yue sitting by the side. Qin Yue quietly ate his meal. His movements were still as graceful as before, but when others looked closely, they could see the dissatisfaction in his eyes. He even gave the Mianmian a very childish stare. The Mianmian was a very intelligent animal. When Qin Yue stared at it, it understood. It did not back down and roared back. Jianran looked at Qin Yue, then at the Mianmian. In the end, she came to the conclusion that Qin Yue was really petty. It was her Mianmian that was obedient and sensible. The Starlight's manager Liu had returned from Jingdu today. Jianran wanted to hand over the new proposal, so she did not have much free time. This proposal was assigned by Manager Liu from the Starlight to Jianran. She told herself that she had to work harder than before, so that she would not disappoint Manager Liu's affirmation of her work.